In this video, I'm going to give you my review of the Yonex Vcore 100. Now, the thing about the Vcore 100 is that right now there's essentially two different versions of it that are brand new. You have this one, the sand beige colorway, and then you have the traditional red colorway, which is what the Vcores are pretty much known for at being in their color. And the thing is, there's really no difference. It's just that this is a color swap of the regular Vcore, and there's not much else to it. But because it's a different color, it will affect price, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So just be mindful of it if you are wanting to get a Vcore 100 and you're trying to figure out which one is which. So one of the big things about the Vcore 100 is that it's a 100 square inch head size. Pretty obvious. What this 100 square inch head size is going to do for you, though, is that it's going to be a little bit more forgiving than your other standard 98 square inch head size. The 98 is going to have a little bit more control to it. The 100 is going to be a little bit more helpful. It's going to be a little bit more forgiving. It'll also help give you a little bit more spin and a little bit more access to power, because though there's more room for these strings to move around inside the actual racket, since there is a bigger head size. Now, you couple that bigger head size with the 16 by 19 string pattern, and you have a great combination for getting you even more spin and power. The reason for that is that the 16 by 19 string pattern, this is typically seen as a more spin-focused string pattern. It is a little bit more forgiving. It's not as harsh because the strings are able to move more inside of the actual racket itself. This is helping to increase the spin, increase the launch angle, and whereas you normally get a little bit more help with control or placing the ball on the other side of the court with your shot from the 98 head size, the 100 head size, especially in the Vcore, you're making up for that lack of control from head size by making up for it with even more spin, so that you can just spin the ball in, and rather than just focusing more on, say, flat shots, with some people like to prefer with the 98, since it doesn't use as much spin. Now, with the actual weight of the racket, this is where it is pretty standard. You do have about 10.6 ounces or around 300 grams unstrung. And then when you add the string into it, you're up to about 11.2 ounces or somewhere right in between the realm of 315 to 320 grams strung. Now, this is not the most heavy racket. This is not the lightest racket. This is just a pretty standard racket, especially this is what most of the companies are saying is the standard weight for a fully grown male tennis player. And that's where you can just find that this one, if you're not used to that big of a weight, it can feel quite a bit heavy. But that's why they also make the Yonex Vcore 100 in a lighter weight version, just so that way it is more accessible to other players. But the 100 is going to be kind of their standard, and that's what they're really focusing on when they were going into and just making the racket. Now, if you look at the 98 version of it, I want to say the 98 is just a little bit heavier, but besides that, the standard Vcore 100 is probably going to be one of the more all-around helpful versions, just not only because of the weight, but because of the head size and the string pattern as well. And to go along with those things, not only does Yonex have a very, very nice quality control to where pretty much if you look at these specs, in almost every single spec that you look at, almost, I said almost, most of the time, I'll say 99% of the time, they're going to be correct. Yonex has one of the best quality controls in rackets as of right now, because they do have at least, I want to say, 50 different human checks on each racket before it ever leaves their factory, because they want to make sure that you are getting the racket that you paid for. One other thing that Yonex also does, which other companies do not do, is what they call their isometric head shape. Now, if you've ever looked at a Yonex racket, I know it's a little bit hard to see on this because it is just kind of like sitting here, but at the top of the head, you may have seen that the Yonex rackets, instead of being just like an oval or a circle like most other tennis rackets, they go up and then they're kind of like flat on top and then they go back down. So what Yonex was able to do by doing this is that they were able to give their rackets about a 7% larger sweet spot than most other racket brands out there. So because of that, that also helps to increase the amount of spin and the amount of power you're getting out of the Vcore 100 in specifics. That also makes it so that the racket is a little bit more forgiving, even on off-center shots. Like I said earlier, when I said it was a more forgiving than, say, their traditional 98, because you have the bigger head size as well as that isometric head shape to just make the strings move a little bit easier and not be as hard to actually get going, and have a bigger sweet spot so that you can hit a better shot even if you're off balance or anything like that. Now, to go along with that, your racket here, the Yonex Vcore 100, this is seems to be the most common number I found for stiffness, is that this is going to be at a 65. Now, this is not the most arm-friendly racket because of that number. Usually a high 60s and starting to get into the 70s. That's where you start to see a lot of the more and more, just I'll say, harder on the arm rackets. But at 65, it is going to be something to be mindful of. So always be sure to demo a racket first before you ever purchase it. I don't want you to just purchase a racket and then find out it caused tennis elbow or it hurt your arm, it didn't work for your game, and then you're stuck with it because you can't return it now that you played with it. And you're only gonna know if it works for you if you play with it. So if you have the option and you have the ability, always be sure to demo the racket first, so that way you know it works for you rather than finding out later and not having a good time. And then, as you probably figured out, this racket is Yonex's spin frame. If you were confused by that, I must have not been doing my job right, and I don't know what I said wrong. But the spin frame from Yonex, they typically have 3 main compartments in terms of slots you can put their rackets into. You have the Yonex Vcore right here, whether it be the 100, the 98, or just any of them. The Yonex Vcores, those are going to be the spin rackets. Then you have the Yonex EZONEs. Those are going to be pretty much the power rackets. And then finally, you have now the Yonex Percepts, or the previously known VCORE Pros. And those are going to be the control rackets. So, like I mentioned earlier, the 2 different versions of the Yonex Vcore that are out right now, they will run you a few different prices. This one right here, you're looking at $269. That is for the red one, because that one came out first. And then this second one here is $275. That is sand beige right over here, because it's the new one. So, if you like the racket, but you want to save just a few bucks or save a little bit of money, because they're the exact same thing, maybe go with the red one. If you like this colorway more and you're okay with spending $6 more, at least here in the US, because this is all in USD, then go with the sand beige. It's up to you. Either one works. They're both the exact same racket. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we have a few other rackets that you may want to try if you like the VCORE 100 or if you're comparing to it. So number 1, you have the Babolat Pure Aero. With the Babolat Pure Aero, this one is going to be Babolat's spin frame. The Babolat Pure Aero, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit stiffer, so a little bit harder on the arm. Yonex does a good job being a little bit easier than Babolat, as do most companies. And then next up, you have the Head Extreme MP. The Head Extreme MP, that's essentially Head's version of this racket. It's the most easiest one to compare it to. And then finally, the Wilson Shift. I'll go with the Wilson Shift 99. Just the standard one, because that's going to be the closest in terms of spec to the VCORE 100, since they don't make a 100 head size. I know, a little bit weird, but they don't. So, the Wilson Shift 99 compared to the VCORE 100, and that'll probably be your best bet from Wilson. Now, there are other rackets out there from other companies that may also be very similar. These are just 3 big ones that I wanted to highlight for you. And if you have any more questions about the Yonex Vcore 100 or anything else like this, comment down below, and I'll try and get back to them as soon as I can. As well as if you like the video, leave a like on it. Subscribe to the channel so we can get the information out there from the people that have it to the people that need it. There's a lot of tennis misinformation in the tennis community, so I took it upon myself to make this channel so that we can get rid of that and get that information out there from the people that have it to the people that need it, like I said. I don't want anyone to have to be worrying about their gear causing them problems or tennis elbow or anything, because then we're on the injured list, you can't play, and that's not fun, and I don't want that for you. So, with that being said, as always, take care.